Mercatus, the U.S. has leveled new sanctions against Russia and announced plans to welcome up to 100,000 refugees fleeing Ukraine. Biden also said he would support removing Russia from the G20. Here to discuss all of the developments after the NATO summit in Europe is Christine McDaniel, Mercatus Center Senior Research Fellow, former Deputy Assistant Secretary at the Treasury Department, and former Senior Trade Economist in the White House Council of Economic Advisors. Christine, thanks for joining us this afternoon. In his news conference today, President Joe Biden said sanctions never deter, but would eventually stop Putin if sustained over time. Do you expect that the sanctions that have been imposed so far and those newly announced will have an impact on Putin's next moves?
So they will have some type of impact. Whether or not they change Putin's mind in terms of continuing the invasion is really beyond really any of us. The sanctions are, for sanctions to be effective, they have to be targeted, and that takes a lot of intelligence and a lot of cooperation. And will they be able to change Putin's tactics? That's far from clear, but they're definitely going to make it costly for him to continue with his tactics. And you could see that today in the NATO meeting, while some countries, Canada, the United States, and a couple others have announced that they will no longer be buying oil and gas from Russia, a lot of our European partners are not really there yet, right? They're so dependent on Russia for oil and gas. And so they're starting to get creative. And I thought it was interesting how there have been some informal reports from this morning coming out saying, well, what if, Europe was still able to buy energy from Russia, but, with the provision that the finances would only be able to be used for, say, food or humanitarian purposes or something. And so I think this is indicative of, the West working together, starting to get really creative on how to keep everybody's, economy going along without crippling us, but trying to make it more and more difficult for Putin to continue those actions.
Christine, also news out of the press conference today that President Biden would like Russia to be expelled from the G20. Is there likely to be pushback from other members? And ultimately, how much leverage does Biden have in that capacity?
So that's yet to be seen how much leverage Biden will have. There has been some reports that Biden and a couple others do not want him there, but there's been other reports that Putin has said that he is coming one way or the other, and some countries have said they welcome him. You have to remember, not all of the G20 is fully on board with these sanctions. We still have a number of countries that are not cooperating. And even some reports of, some money laundering potential activity in other large countries. There were reports of China and maybe India, and Indonesia. There are a number of countries that are not that excited about this and would not necessarily agree to Putin not attending. So that then begs the question: what will happen if Putin just shows up? Will everyone meet with him? Will we have a splintered G20? Those are a lot of questions.
And adding to that, we've also seen that President Putin has proposed having what he calls unfriendly countries settling their contracts for Russian gas in rubles. Now, given that in the third quarter of 2021, an estimated 58% of Gazprom's foreign gas sales were in euros, 39% in US dollars, what are the implications of this move? And does this essentially turn the tables on Western sanctions?
Putin is clearly under pressure. The ruble has been in free fall since, early March, at least. And this is one way, he's trying to garner up some demand for rubles. We'll see, whether and to what extent that works. But it is a signal that the financial sanctions are starting to bite.
And to that point, within Russia, do you think the Russian people are blaming Putin for the sanctions and the economic turmoil that they're now experiencing? Or is the Kremlin messaging that this is the West's fault actually taking hold? And do you think that has an impact for what Putin may do next?
That is anyone's guess. So there's so much propaganda going on in Russia right now. In fact, I was just listening to some open source intelligence experts yesterday discuss this. And, it really depends on what access you have inside Russia. Do you have access to, to a particular VPN where you can get access to Western news sources or not? We have friends, their parents in Russia, are really just don't believe that Russia is invading Ukraine in any malicious manner. And then, of course, there are people who in Russia who clearly know what's going on. So there's a lot of misinformation getting spread around. Putin is trying very hard to control that. And to what extent he can control it, we'll see. But there's a group in Russia that does seem to have access to unfettered information, and but those voices are being shut down by him and his agencies.
We do thank you for your time this afternoon. That's Christine McDaniel there, the Mercatus Center Senior Research Fellow and former Deputy Assistant Secretary at the Treasury Department and former Senior Trade Economist in the White House Council of Economic Advisors. Thank you so much.